All right, welcome to our live lecture. We are in week 3. I hope you guys are doing well. How are you? How's life? How's class? How's social distancing? Great. Well, let's see. A couple of things to know as we get started here. So I'm going to cover most of the content for the week today in like one session. I don't know if you had the opportunity to see the announcement that Jennifer put out, but we're going to have a guest instructor on Wednesday. My friend Laura is going to come over and she's going to talk about the MBTI, the Myers-Briggs type indicator. And she is like the go-to person to tell you about what the MBTI is all about. And so that's going to be a really great lecture for you guys. You're going to be able to really kind of hone in on what makes you tick. It's not like a diagnosis kind of thing. It's kind of like a just like a skill set so that you know just a different way to conceptualize how you fall in under these measures, and it's good stuff. So that'll be on Wednesday. I would like to encourage you to go. I think the MBTI is actually included in our bonus material for week 3. So go check out the bonus material and see if you can fill out the MBTI, and it'll tell you how you fall into the categories, and then Laura will help you translate into what that means for you. So that'll be good stuff. And so it falls on me to do the teaching for the regular content. And so we're going to talk about the week 3 reading material, and we're going to go over the quests for week 3. And so I do want to encourage you to be on the lookout for your feedback for week 2 discussion boards. I will say I'm noticing there are some students that are doing some like interesting things. Seems like you guys are coming up with your own ways of doing these discussion boards. And so really want to encourage you to follow the directions on the discussion board. You want to answer each of the questions. I think it's, let me just wait. Because I want to make sure we give you the opportunity to know what it is specifically. So I'm going to go through it again a little bit towards the end. And I want to make sure that I don't get ahead of myself, because I really want to make sure that the things that I see you guys doing, you know that it's not the right way. And so if you don't have 100, you're going to know why when you read your feedback. So I'll say more once we know there are more people here. I want to make sure we get more people into the session. Sometimes people come in a little bit late. I want to give people time to get here. So we'll get into it then. Cool. All right. So what are we going to do? We're going to talk about motivation, and then we're going to talk about grit and gamification a little bit, and then we're going to talk about conflict management. Because those are the 3 reading sections you guys have this week. Cool. So I'm going to turn off my little video thing so that I don't keep distracting myself with my headshot. All right. So first, we're going to talk about motivation. And so a lot of the motivation type stuff comes up from this character, Dan Pink. He wrote a book called A Whole New Mind. And so what you're going to see is he's got this thing that leads up to a concept called the candle problem. And what we're going to talk about is how there's a difference between 21st century jobs and 20th century jobs. And what's happening is software is replacing a lot of the stuff that used to be really important in the 20th century. Software is replacing a lot of those tasks. And so what is becoming more valuable is the ability to engage the right side of the brain, which is where all of our creativity is. And so that's like artistry and inventiveness and big picture thinking. Right brain stuff is what Dan Pink says is going to be really big in the future. And so we're going to kind of flesh that stuff out in our motivation material this week. So what's motivation? Well, I'm glad you asked. It's right there on the slide. It's a force or influence that causes someone to do something. Motivation is stuff that makes you do stuff. And so I think the stuff that makes us do stuff is like our lens, right? And so we're going to look at the types of motivation that you will display. And so typically, if you're anything like me, you have an inside voice and an outside voice. And so that's what motivation works like too. We have inside motivation and outside motivation. And so inside motivation is called intrinsic. This is the motivation that comes from within you. This is where all of your good stuff inside of you lives and makes you do stuff. So these are things like your belief system, your values, what you think. And so intrinsic motivation is when you do things because you just enjoy it. It's doing an activity for its inherent satisfaction or enjoyment instead of for some external consequence or reward. Intrinsic motivation is doing the things you enjoy doing because you enjoy doing them. Think about your favorite play activity. I'm betting you do your favorite play activity not just to get paid, but because you enjoy doing it. And so because you enjoy doing it, you're going to go do it regardless of whether or not there's some outside reward. You do it because of how you feel when you do it. And so for me, photography is an intrinsic motivation activity. And I do photography because I love it, not to get paid. When I was a drummer, I played the drums because I loved it, not because I got paid. In fact, I pretty much never got paid. I did it because I loved it, and I did it a lot, and I did it well. I was intrinsically motivated to play the drums. Cool. It is nice to get paid, Ramon. And so, typically, whenever we tap into our intrinsic motivation and we want to start getting paid, we'll probably go find a way to get paid for things that we enjoy. But it's the extrinsic motivation that is tied to an outside reward. And so think about, here you are, you're taking, early classes at Full Sail, and you expect to get a grade. I would say that grade is not necessarily compensation, but it is an outcome, and it's separable from why you do this class. Like, you may not think psychology is the most important thing in your life, and you don't do psychology because you love it, but you will do this class because you want to get through it and you want to earn an A. And that A is your extrinsic motivation if this is not your favorite thing. So there may be other things like, what are some examples that you guys might be able to think of that are extrinsic motivation? These are external rewards that motivate you to do something. Obviously, money is going to be the thing, right? But like, what are some of the tasks that you do? Maybe you have a jobby job, and you go to that job not because it's your passion in life, but because you need it. Yeah, so working at a job that you don't enjoy, but it pays well. Yep. What else? So my homeowners association says I needed to clean the trim on my house. You know, sometimes when it rains, there's tar that's on your roof, and that tar kind of gets down on the little white spaces in your roof. And so I have to go scrub the tar off of my roof trim, right? I'm doing that because I got an HOA letter that said, you need to do this. And so there's a separate reward. I'm doing it because I have to, and because I got a letter saying I need to. So that's an extrinsic motivator, was the letter. Cool. So think about your life. What do you do that keeps you reaching for your goals? And think about, think about the things that are going on in your life. What are you investing your time in? And are you investing your time because of something that's an intrinsic thing, something you do because you love it? Or are you spending time right now doing things because you have to, and you've got to get, some sort of compensation or reward or merit to get you through? Carmen, I work hard in my course. Seth, my time is invested in games and videos. Cool. But getting paid as well, yes. Investing in the future of me, nice. Music and games, cool. So do you guys see these things as intrinsic motivation or extrinsic motivation? Are you doing them because you love it, or are you doing them to get paid or to get some sort of reward? Both. Both is a solid answer. Energy, healing, intrinsic, cool. Some of you guys are saying that you can see both. And yeah, you totally could. And ideally there is a balance in all things, right? So that's true here too. Yeah, Carmen, what's the point of living your life if it's not worth enjoying? Very true. It's intrinsic because I enjoy it, extrinsic because of the potential it has to make me money. Yeah. Cool. So there's not like a right or wrong, It's good to be able to weigh it out in your mind. Am I doing this because I'm motivated inside, or am I doing this because I'm motivated by what I get? And there needs to be a balance for both. Sometimes if we're only doing things because we enjoy it, we may not be making any money, and that could be bad. But sometimes if we are only doing things because of the money, we may not have the creativity satisfaction that we're looking for in life. May find that we may need to dig down a little bit deeper into our creativity. And sometimes, as we're going to find out, the reward sometimes blocks our creativity. Okay? And so we find that in what Dan Pink is talking about here. The puzzle of motivation between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So here's what we have found out. Rewards work. So science knows 20th century rewards do work, but only in narrow circumstances or routine tasks. And so we're talking about extrinsic motivation here. If then, or carrot and stick rewards often destroy creativity. And he says the secret to high performance is the drive to do things for their own sake. And so when he means high performance, he doesn't mean necessarily quick, but like awesome, okay? And we'll get into that. So non-commissioned artwork is typically judged to be more creative and better overall versus commissioned artwork. How do you stay motivated to be creative when you also want to get paid for your work? I'm going to break these two things down real quick. What he's saying is, if you do art because you love art, it is typically judged as better than if somebody says, hey, artist, go create me some art. I want it to be this, this, and this. What he's saying is, when people do art because they say, I'm going to go do art, that art comes out better than if someone's being paid to go create art for money only. And then for we, the creators, how do we stay motivated to be creative when we also want to get paid? So if our art is not as good, if we're doing it for money, how do we stay motivated to be creative whenever we're getting paid for it? And so that's a constant, like, yes, subjective, but like it's also a constant battle between a working artist and an artist working on themselves. So we're going to give this some actual specificity here. We're going to talk about this thing called the candle problem. And if you have already done your reading, you're going to be like, hey, I already know this. Well, that's great. For those of us who haven't done the reading yet, let me expound upon what we're saying. So the candle problem was an experiment. And so we got two groups in our experiment. And both groups are given the same stuff. They're given a candle, a book of matches, and a box of thumbtacks. And so to these two groups, we have two different things to tell them. So in group one, we're going to say, we would like for you to help science. We want to see how quickly you can get this candle so that it doesn't drip wax on the floor, elevate it off of the floor. And then we're going to tell the other group, we want you to get this candle, elevate it off of the floor. Here's your stuff. And we're going to give you a reward. We're going to pay you 25 bucks if you're the fastest group to do it. So if you can beat the other guys, you're going to get $25 to do it. And so the first group is doing it just to be helpful. They're actually told that they were doing it for science. And the second group is doing it to win, to get $25. So for the reward. So group one is going to just be helpful and help science, and group two is trying to get 25 bucks. So which team do you think wins? Seth says the $25 win. Everyone's saying Team B, the second group. In my mind, it was the second group too, but we are all wrong. Team B, or the $25 group, got beaten every time. What? But they were, you know, driven by rewards. How would they not be winning, you know? Group number one, where's their motivation? All they got to do is just be helpful. Group two, they've got a reason to win, right? So, so here's what happened. When you look at the candle problem, you separate the two groups into you're here to help science or you're here to get 25 bucks if you can be awesome. They were given the same set of items, the candle, the matches, and the box of thumbtacks. But what happened is once they had, you know, go, and both groups were off to the races, the first group were able to do their thing, and they figured out pretty quickly that that box that was holding the thumbtacks didn't just have to be a thumbtack holder. It could be a platform. If you took a couple of thumbtacks and tacked it to the side of the wall and you just set the candle in there and light the match. The other group went, oh crap, what do we do? We've got this box of thumbtacks and we got to do something with this candle. And so they could not figure out that that box holding the thumbtacks could be a platform for the candle. They got stuck on functional fixedness. And functional fixedness is the idea that this box is only a box. It's only supposed to hold thumbtacks. It doesn't have to be a unitasker. It can be a multitasker, but you have to think creatively to do that. And so they got stuck in functional fixedness. And the other group didn't have that burden. And so they were able to creatively think for a way to use the items that they had without getting stuck on functional fixedness. And so when we go back to our little thing here talking about the puzzle of motivation, remember, 20th century rewards work, but only in narrow circumstances. And rewards often destroy creativity. And so the reward messed with their creative thinking when it came to how to solve this problem. And the box was the creative thing that they needed. And so they couldn't get it. They were stuck in functional fixedness. And so what happens with incentives being powerful is if it's something that you do over and over and over again, then incentives do work. And so if it's something like factory work or something routine that you do often, you know, like I used to work at a library, I put stickers and barcodes on books, you know, and if you'd have paid me more, I'd have been faster. That was a routine task and I knew how to do it. And if you paid me more, I could have done more. But this is not that kind of thing. This was a solve a puzzle kind of thing, and they got stuck. And so the reward was a barrier to creativity. We don't pay you to think. So the recap is rewards work for routine, boring tasks. Rewards create stress for creative thinking, and they narrow the focus and restrict possibility. And so this is why what you see in a lot of sales pitches is we rely on the structure of the sales pitch, not on the creative ability to deviate from the sales pitch. And so, you know, people who earn commission typically follow a path that they've already thought out so that they don't have to creatively try to get thinking because they're trying to get paid. And so they get really, really good at one thing in order to be a high salesperson instead of, you know, trying to be creative and changing it every time there's a new opportunity. So there you go. That is the candle problem. And so the bottom line here is it's not all about money. Cool? So that's the candle problem. So now we're going to talk about 3 elements of motivation. We're actually going to talk about 2 different models, and they're going to be very similar. And I'm not going to try to confuse you. I'm just trying to give you a heads up before we get there. So this is the Dan Pink motivation theory, and it comes down to autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So let's break down each one of these parts. Autonomy is our desire to be autonomous or self-directed. People need autonomy over task, time, team, and technique. This is just being able to pick the direction you want to go in. Okay? This is like a primary need that we all have to be in charge of where we're going. And so it's just being in charge of what it is you would like to do. It's power over what you're doing, your time frame, who's involved, and how you're going to do it. That's what autonomy is. The next part is mastery. This is just being good at stuff, getting better at something that matters. And here's a connecting point. Mastery begins when you achieve flow, when the challenges you face match your abilities. When you're good at something and it's challenging, it feels good because you're good at it. But in order to maintain that mastery, it demands grit and effort and practice. So in order to stay in that mastery level, you have to continually challenge yourself to, keep pushing forward. And so the third component is purpose. We as people seek a higher purpose or a cause greater than ourselves. This is more than just self-interest. It's the idea that what we do matters for ourselves and for other people. We want to feel like the stuff that we do is for a reason. And so purpose is also one of our primary needs. So there's another model also, as I said, and it's called the self-determination theory. And I want you to see that these things look an awful lot alike. And I'm going to explain it so that you see they're very, very alike. So autonomy is common for both. And competence and mastery is the second. And so mastery is being good at stuff, right? So is competence. And purpose is our third point. But over on the self-determination theory, we have relatedness. Well, if you look back at purpose, one of the things you'll see is that we want to feel like the stuff that we do matters to other people as well as ourselves. Well, then it's not surprising whenever relatedness is the third part of the self-determination theory, because both of these models want to apply our stuff about it being significant to other people. And so the self-determination theory is like a primary needs model. This comes from the primary needs of psychology. And then Dan Pink is kind of like newer, but they're both saying the same thing. These are two models of motivation. And so I want you to know that it is trustworthy and true. And there's good evidence of that because they're both so similar and basically saying the same thing. And so Dan Pink is the guy that we are studying in our reading. And so he has autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And the self-determination theory from the bigger world of psychology is autonomy, competence, and relatedness. And so you can be confident that this stuff is solid because it's saying something so similar. Cool. And so here's a real interesting challenge for you. You know, you're learning at Full Sail because you want to have a career in entertainment industries. And so you're gonna have to go off into this world, hopefully a world that's not locked down, and you're gonna have to like go exist in a work environment. And so I think it's really important to focus on developing your lens on all of this stuff. Because you're gonna have to go live out in this kind of world, you know? And so if you've got the ability to either work in a place like this or challenge, yourself to create a place like this to work in, then it's very cool. And for me, like working on my team at Full Sail, I've got a team where we kind of live this stuff out. We have compassion really as the foundation of everything that we do. And so it's a fulfilling place to live. And then, you know, I've got a therapy practice where I go out and I have the ability to connect this for other people and ask them basically the same thing. Are they challenging themselves, you know, to be able to be motivated and to cultivate motivation in their lives? Yeah, Trevor, step one, follow dream professionally. Cool. So what do you guys think? Has Dan Pink persuaded you about the gap between what science knows and what organizations do? Do you agree or disagree? Do you believe in this whole idea that like money can actually block your creativity? I know it was difficult for me. You know, in the world that I grew up in, my father was a sales executive for IBM, and for IBM's competition before that. And so how I grew up was through the lens of compensation for performance. You know, like if you're going to be awesome, you know, you need to challenge yourself to be great, and you need to also challenge yourself to achieve financially. So this idea that financial challenge could actually be blocking your creativity took me a while to get around that. Um, Carmen, you might be clouded with your own self-desires and dismiss others. Very true. Seth, I can see how it blocks creativity, but at the same time, we can't have people work without compensation because we all need money to pay for food and housing. Yep, very true. So think about the people in your lives and see if you can identify, you know, where their balance is for intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. And yes, I think you're going to see that there is pros and cons on both sides, and uh, there you will certainly find some examples where there's a mismatch between compensation and creativity. And so think about your motivation, those two models, self-determination theory, and then Dan Pink's motivation theory, autonomy, mastery, and purpose. How do these elements play out in your future? It's good stuff. Just to wrap up here, the self-determination theory, people are geared towards growth and mastering challenges, which forms who they are and how they understand themselves. So this whole motivation stuff is based on the idea that instead of, you know, manipulating people, if you encourage them to tap into their motivation, they're going to go conquer the world without needing to be manipulated. And so then compassion is an option. There's no reason to be manipulative. Compassion can be applied without any, you know, control issues that need to be introduced. And this is really important. Okay, so that is the motivation material. Cool. All right. Let's talk about grit and gamification. I love the content on grit. It's good stuff. So before we get too far into it, I want to show you a video. Grab something to write with. You know, you can pull up a document on your computer if you like. What I want you to do is think about, when have you done something really difficult? When did you bring around, you know, a victory, which in something that could have been a defeat very easily? When have you done difficult things? Just be kind of thinking about that for yourself for a minute here while I bring up this little video.
Come on. Oh, for crap. Hello, Peter. What's happening? I'm gonna need you to go ahead and come in tomorrow. So if you could be here around 9, that would be great. Okay? Oh, and I almost forgot. I'm also gonna need you to go ahead and come in on Sunday, too, okay? We lost some people this week, and we need to sort of play catch-up. Thanks.
So I was sitting in my cubicle today and I realized ever since I started working, every single day of my life has been worse than the day before it. So that means that every single day that you see me, that's on the worst day of my life.
What about today? Is today the worst day of your life?
Yeah.
Wow, that's messed up. I'm sorry. Go on.
Is there any way that you could sort of just zonk me out so that, like, I don't know that I'm at work in here? Could I come home and think that I've been fishing all day or something?
I love that video. So think about the stuff that we just talked about with the motivation material, and how if you allow people to focus on what is motivating for them, you allow them to tap into their autonomy and mastery and purpose, they don't need to be managed the same way. You can just set them loose and they'll go conquer the world if they know which direction to go in. And I think Office Space is kind of the great way to look at the opposite, the way that 20th century view of work is, where there are so many control issues that people have that they feel like, you know, they feel like they've been completely manipulated. And that's what it is. So it also brings in this idea about grit. And so with grit, we're going to look at having, you know, perseverance for the long term. And so sometimes you have to push through those instances where people are being unfair. And you've got to develop a longer term view of how to be successful through those short, difficult times. And so think about, you know, the things that you've done in your life. What are the most challenging things that you've ever overcome? I know for me, I struggled in my undergraduate degree quite a bit. I shared with you guys a little bit. I was suspended twice for bad grades. And it took me 8 years to get my 4-year degree. And, you know, there's a much longer story in there than I can tell right now, but the gist of it is I was able to get back in to my college after being on suspension the second time, and I made the dean's list 3 times in a row, and I was able to graduate. And then I went on for a short period of time selling cameras and got back into graduate school and made straight A's in graduate school. And now I have a license as a counselor, and my whole thing is about the process now of developing grit. And so I use that as a teacher as my primary tool. I help you guys get from where you are to where you're going. So I help you overcome your little obstacles in this month. And so it's really, really important for you to know how do you deal with, those short-term challenges that life is sure to bring along. So what is grit? I appreciate your encouragement in the chat box. Grit is courage and resolve, strength of character. An example is he displayed the true grit of the Navy pilot. Here are some synonyms, things that are similar to grit: courage, bravery, pluck, mettle, backbone, spirit, strength of character, so on and so forth, perseverance. Yeah, grit is giving it your all. And for longer than minimally necessary. So perseverance and passion for long-term goals. It's the tendency to sustain effort in and effort, or interest in and effort toward achieving those goals. So there's something you're interested in. Can you put in enough effort to achieve over the long term what it takes for what you're interested in? Cool. So here are some examples of grit. Yeah, Trevor, vision and discipline. Cool. Finishing what you begin, staying committed to your goals, working hard even after experiencing failure or when you feel like quitting, and sticking with a project, activity, or sport for more than a few weeks. These are good examples. Finishing what you begin. Really, I think for me, the best example here is working hard even after experiencing failure or when you feel like quitting. That is where I see grit happening the most in students and clients. That sounds like marching band in the summer desert. Yes. So look at your little thing you wrote down. Can you think of a time when you demonstrated grit? I gave you my example of I struggled in my undergraduate degree, struggled a lot. Now I have a master's degree. The moral of that story is not I'm awesome. The moral of that story is grit is really important. Carmen struggled many times throughout high school and even now. Yeah. Is there anybody who I'm sure everybody's got an example. Ramon going through boot camp, that's a difficult one. You may not feel like sharing yours is the most important, but I can tell you, everybody's got to have some level of story about grit. You don't have to tell it. Finishing IB in high school, cool. Dancing, cool. My best friend said, I get nowhere with dance. And they trekked 30 miles through New Mexico desert. Oh my goodness, a 60-pound backpack. Oh my gosh. Python class in community college was awful. Wow. Moving away from home, yeah, definitely. Time in marching band, each day was hard, yep. Cool, good examples, guys. So what can you do to develop grit? I'm going to just cheat on my slides here and say one way to develop grit is to fail and keep going. Things on the slide: develop a growth mindset, which we're going to talk about. Practice optimism, find your passion in life and pursue it. Know how to quit responsibly. So what is this growth mindset thing? I'm going to show you an example of what is not a growth mindset here. I love this video.
And my wife says it's going to be delicious. Any questions? Good. Then I hope you're all ready for the second biannual inter-office soccer palooza match. And you know that I'm ready to coach.
$10 says he micromanages this thing too.
Stand exactly 2 feet apart! Dribble left, dribble right, Every time you score a goal, I need you guys to raise your arms up just like this. Like a V for victory. Like you're having fun. Like you're trying to let me down!
If it wouldn't work on the field, then why would it work in an office?
Typo.
I love this video. So that's an example of managers not believing in a growth mindset. Whenever they've got to hold you up and push you around on the field. Oh, look, it's my old boss. I think everybody has an example of where it felt like that was us, where we were totally being micromanaged. And so I love this content because it's about how do you go from where you are to a better place. You know, we're all in a process of becoming more mature. And if you look at your life and you see people having that view of you, I want to encourage you to know that you can go to better places. Yeah, at that point, why wouldn't the boss just do it himself? That seems to be kind of the big question there. Some folks just shouldn't be in leadership positions. If they feel like they have to manipulate people, it's not a good fit for being in charge of people. If you don't believe people have the ability to grow on their own, that's a problem. And so a growth mindset is being able to become a bigger and better person. In a growth mindset, people believe that their most basic abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. Brains and talent are just the starting point. This view creates a love of learning and a resilience that's essential for great accomplishment. And that's from Carol Dweck. So in my teaching and in my counseling, this is how I view you guys. My job is not to, you know, necessarily punish you with bad grades, or with my clients, it's not to tell them what to do. My job is to point people to growth. And so I think I can speak for Jennifer also. Whenever you guys have something going on, we try to work with you to help you overcome those obstacles. And so we write our feedback to encourage you about, hey, in the future, here's what you want to do so that you get better. You know, whenever you have some form of hardship happening in life, we don't tell you, oh, that's too bad. We're going to give you something to do to overcome a challenge that you experience if life happens to you. And so the whole idea here is that we believe that you have the ability to make a change and become a stronger student as a result of having an action plan about growth. And so that's where we come from in our teaching. Other things you need to do is to view challenges as opportunities, replace failing with learning. And so it says here, don't internalize your mistakes. What we're saying here is don't make your mistakes universal. I always fail. This is just who I am. Don't do that to yourself. Don't put yourself in a box of I always or never kind of things. Don't take your mistakes and apply those universally to your entire character. It's like, there's this one time I messed up, you know? I mean, I had 4 years where I was doing horribly in college. And if I'd have taken that as a judgment on my entire college experience, my college experience would have ended, you know? That would have been a shame because now I have a master's degree and I teach college. And so don't let failure be universalized to the rest of your experience. It's a measurement of something current, not a judgment of the future. Kind of like giving proper criticism. Yep. It's not that you're wrong. It's just some aspect to be improved. Yep. I know, like, this was something I really became aware of with photography because I see a lot of photography criticism, and some photographers, you know, really struggle with having their work analyzed or getting feedback on it. And so it's tough to see criticism as positive because sometimes it feels very judgy. And sometimes people aren't good at giving criticism without being judgy. And that's really on them, not on you. If you put yourself in the position to have your work critiqued, don't feel judged when you get somebody critiquing you with judgment instead of criticism. Because that's on them. It's not on you. You're the one offering up your work to be critiqued. They did not. And so sometimes people do criticism like a troll would do criticism, you know? And so value the process over the end result. Make a new goal for every goal accomplished, and think of your brain as a muscle. And don't give in to trolls. All right. Let's see. I'll show you this video real quick. This is a good video. This is about the marshmallow test. This is one of the biggest psychology experiments kind of ever.
I'm gonna show you how to take this old dresser drawer.
Sit at the table at a desk with a plate and one marshmallow. They could either choose to eat the one marshmallow right then and there, or they could wait until I came back into the room and have 2 marshmallows. I left them alone in the room for 15 minutes. Take a look. The marshmallow test has been used for decades by psychologists. It's been used with children to predict later academic success, including literacy, SAT scores, and other academic outcomes. There's no definitive answers from the marshmallow test. It's not a matter of passing or failing. What we're looking for is whether children can really resist this piece of white candy sitting in front of them that's sweet, that, the smell of it, the allure of the marshmallow. In Pratmesh's case, we really saw this added curiosity because he had never actually tasted a marshmallow before. All of the children managed to show some level of self-control and resist the temptation to eat the whole marshmallow. As you can see from the footage, you can catch a glimpse into children's ability to control their impulses. This ability, which is developed around the time of kindergarten, can be linked to other outcomes later in life. At the end, the marshmallows were in kind of different states. Some had been squished, ripped apart, nibbled around. There was this temptation and there was this impulse to kind of try it out.
Okay, so I love the marshmallow test. So as we're talking about grit, there's a connection here for the marshmallow test because it's about delayed gratification. And so grit is being able to be working on something that you're interested in, working on it hard enough to get through the challenges, right? And so when they had the marshmallow test, the kids had the challenge in front of them to not eat that marshmallow for 15 minutes. And for these little kids, it's hard. And so what they found was the kids who did not eat the marshmallow, they were able to delay their gratification or demonstrate grit. They were able to delay their gratification for 15 minutes. Those kids went on to be more successful than the kids who ate the marshmallow before the 15 minutes was up. And the marshmallow test was a better indicator of success than the SAT test score was. And so if you did really well on the SAT score, that's great, right? The expectation is you go on to be successful. The marshmallow test was a better predictor of future success than the SAT was, and that's cool. But the kicker here is the marshmallow test is about delayed gratification, and grit is also about something very similar, being able to have long-term goals worth your effort to accomplish, and then making the steps to be able to accomplish those goals, even when hardship is part of the process. So here's some of the last things about how to get gritty. Practice optimism, find your passion, and quit responsibly. So this is a really important one. I have, an example where I did photography professionally for 15 years, and I do counseling and teaching. So there was a short period of time where I was trying to do all three of those, and I knew it was not sustainable. And so I let my photography and my counseling kind of exist at the same time to see which one would be a better fit for me. And counseling was a better fit for me than professional photography. And so I needed to find a way to, honor my commitments while I was transitioning away from photography. And so there's a quitting responsibly thing there. So you have to, tactical retreat. Yep. You've got to be able to commit or finish up your commitments instead of just bailing out because you choose to not do that stuff anymore. And so another thing is like, in any job that I've ever had, you don't just quit because you get mad. You've got to find the right way to be able to, honor who you portray yourself to be. And so I find the best way to do that is if there's something that I can't do, I'm going to tell people way before it's ever an issue that I'm unhappy, you know, cross the bridge, don't burn it. Yep. One of the jobs that I did, I sold cameras for several years at a big store here in Orlando, you know, and it came time for me to, you know, not work there anymore. And when the typical thing was, you know, give 2 weeks notice, I gave them a month. And the reason why I gave them a month was because I knew that the standard was 2 weeks. And what was the worst they would do? Fire me for telling them I was going to leave in a month? Like, I'd already made the decision. And so they appreciated that. And I was able to go back there and work there again for a season whenever it was, you know, beneficial to do that. And so it's always a good idea to find, you know, use that motivation step that we were talking about and find out how do you honor your commitments. And if you can't do something, build a structure for how to quit responsibly because it demonstrates grit. Cool. All right. Let's make a quick switch over here to gamification. And so gamification, last time I tried to quit my job, the company went bankrupt. Gamification is applying elements of games to other areas of life. So things like competition and rules of play, points and scoring. When you're using those things out in the workplace or advertising or marketing, that's what gamification is. Here's a quick little video for it.
So what is gamification? If you think gamification is the latest gizmo, you're wrong. Gamification is applying game mechanics or game dynamics in a non-game context. The biggest non-game context right now is enterprises. More and more businesses are using gamification to engage both their customers and employees. Gamification can engage customers through incentives, rewards programs, leaderboards, badges, points, or simply free stuff. These incentives motivate people to complete actions. The actions can be anything from making more sales calls to working out. Every industry is introducing gamification in some way. Some of the top uses are education and training, healthcare, B2B marketing, or sales teams. The uses are endless. Gamification can be integrated with e-commerce sites, CRMs, and websites. The data it produces is big. Analyzing your big data from gamification is important and can point out flaws or changes you can make to your business. It can also tell you what is working. Gamification is available through SaaS or consulting, and the pricing models can range from licensing to user-based. To find out which gamification platform would best fit your business, contact technologyadvice.com for free consultation with your technology experts. technologyadvice.com. We're on IT.
All right. So here are some benefits for gamification. Gamification boosts morale, raises productivity, increases creativity, fosters teamwork, optimizes work quality, reinforces desired behavior, and promotes engagement. And so it really comes down to the mechanics. Gamification is really a bunch of mechanics to increase engagement. And so here are some of them. Abdul, yes, so it's basically a way to incentivize employees, yes. Or consumers. Leaderboards, top 10 lists, badges, competition, leveling up points. These are some of the mechanics. So think about your, like, I think right now mobile games are the ones that are like the most blatantly using game mechanics. Anything that you notice in games that are designed to, identify how you're doing, Like if you have levels in, games, you've got points and badges and leaderboards. These are the things that identify how you're doing, right? How you compare to other people, how your points are earned, how many of them you have. Developing a character is gamification. So all of these things are designed to get you to have some like measurable identity with where you are in the world of that game. And so when we're talking about gamification, it's where are we doing this outside of a game? Where do we see this in marketing? Where do we see this in, restaurants? Where do we see it in really anything? I mean, anywhere you see it out in life. If you can look out into what you're doing and see gamification techniques, what you're going to see is that it's trying to create an identity within the universe of whatever that thing is. And so here's a picture of a clothes store, right? Excuse me. It says cashiers can remove the hanger in 5.2 seconds. Can you do it faster than them? And so notice it's drawing you into their world. Their cashiers can remove their hangers in 5.2 seconds. How about you? How fast can you do it? They're trying to get you to identify with their world and then participate in their world by competing with them. And so they're challenging you, please remove your hangers and leave them here. Why? Because they don't want you to steal their hangers or take their hangers home. So the thing is, they want to keep their hangers so they can reuse them. So they've created a game about how to have that happen. So by telling you, hey, you can identify with our cashiers by competing with them. Here's where they land. How can you do? And so once you agree to participate in that game, you have done what they wanted you to do, which was leave your hanger there so they can use it again. Make sense? So they've manipulated you into doing what they wanted you to do, which was not take their hangers home, by getting you to compete with this number that they came up with about how fast their cashiers can do it. There you go. So here's Firehouse. So Firehouse wants you to buy more subs, right? And so what they want to do is get you to purchase 10 combos, and then the 10th one is free, right? Buy 9, 10th one is free. Well, they've already figured out their profit margin, and they've already broken it down by per item, right? And so by introducing this game to you, they've challenged you to come back and get 9 of these things, because they know that they probably only have to get you to buy 3 or 4 of them before they break even. And then if they keep you coming, they're going to make more money. And so their thing is they give you this ticket. And so they've got that ticket, and each time you punch it, you're leveling up. And so you know where you stand. And at the same time, they've got it totally branded out. And so it's a future reward. Yep. So anyway, they're manipulating you to come back and buy more subs. So there you go. There's a couple of examples. Let's do this. Let's take a 5-minute break, and then we've got just a real short couple of slides on conflict resolution, and then I'm going to go over the homework. So let's do a quick break for 5 minutes, and get up, stretch, get a drink of water, and in 5 minutes, I'll come back and we will finish up. We will be done certainly before 4 o'clock. Cool? All right, be right back. Alrighty, guys, let's finish up real quick. A couple of things here. We're going to do a little set of slides on conflict management. I have a video. I don't remember what this video is. Let's go see what it is. I do remember what this is.
There are over 1 million Walmart associates doing their best to keep our nation going while keeping us safe. Because while some things have changed, one thing hasn't: our devotion to you and our communities.
All right, here you go. Conflict. What is it? Why does it happen? And let's help you find your conflict management style. So, conflict can be costly to a company. It's associated with emotional fatigue, absenteeism, and turnover, and feelings of purposelessness. So conflict is bad, you know. I think one of the things is that, like, it's like part of my slide is missing. When you don't know how you resolve conflict, sometimes it'll get ahead of you and you don't know how to bring it back to find that balance and the way that you get things resolved. And so one of the main things that happens is, it's called projection. And so projection is psychology world term for, like, if I have an issue, I might try to make it look like you have my issue because I know how to attack that. And so if I feel like, you know, I get blamed for things, I might, you know, put myself out in the example of, you know, getting blamed for things all the time. Like we talked earlier about, you know, taking our failures and making those bigger than, you know, just that one time. Projection is kind of the same thing. It's whenever we know that an issue is, you know, bad, we'll try to tee that issue up and like use it against other people, or we'll, you know, use a weakness that I have and put it onto other people and then attack that person. And so projection is any time that I take something about myself and I project it onto the other person as though it's their problem. And so that creates, you know, a real issue. And so in the little video there, they were trying to practice using I statements, or they were trying to do the opposite of projection. And they did not do it very well. And that was kind of the whole premise of it, was that it was not done right. They were trying to use I statements so that it's not projection. Projection is you. You are always like this. You are always like that. Like how the dog doesn't think this. You're very smart. Yep. So projection is when you try to put other people out as being the problem, but characterizing how they are in a not very genuine way. And so here are some of the conflict management styles. The first one we have is competing. And so this is, the competing style is assertive and uncooperative. This is the my way or the highway kind of thing. And so whenever you try to resolve competition or try to, you know, resolve conflict by putting yourself in a competing way, if your tendency is to try to win, competition is always going to be a favored route. Because if we frame an argument in winners and losers, all I have to do is win, right? And so if that's the way that I see the world, is winners and losers, then I can know that I can control that narrative about winning and using that to my advantage. And so then all I got to do is go out and try to, win. And if that's the world that I live in, I'm motivated to do that. And so competing is one of the conflict management routes. Next is accommodating. This is unassertive and cooperative. This is the go along to get along kind of route. And so accommodating is trying to make it okay for the other person. You're trying to diffuse that conflict by giving them what they want. And so if I just cooperate and go along because I want to get along with people, it may look like a character strength. But if it becomes a thing where I don't ever stand up for something, I'm just always accommodating, then it's going to become pretty obvious quickly that I'm not contributing actively, I'm just cooperating. And sometimes that's not real good for a team, for somebody to just be unassertive and cooperative. That person may not ever accomplish anything, and they may not be a real asset to a group. Going along to get along may help get through little things, but it may not help for the long-term goal. Think about what we were talking about with grit. An accommodating style is not one that demonstrates grit. These are people who are going along to get along, so they're going to get through little transactions, but they may not be able to help the group get to where they're going long-term. It's a time bomb. Yes, Alex, good. Next is the compromising. And so this is a moderate approach. They're moderate in assertiveness and moderate in cooperating. And so, this is the middle of the road. These are people who are going to be able to stand up to some resistance, trying to be assertive, but not necessarily dominating. And we're trying to be cooperative, but not necessarily accommodating. And so we're willing to make compromises here, and it might help the group get through some of those smaller issues, and it might help get to the longer term goals. But what happens here is it may not be quite enough to get fully to where the goal is. You can compromise, quite a bit. And so it really becomes up to the group and how they do those compromises and who's leading and what the direction is, because this can be a position of possible strength as long as you don't have somebody who is going to hijack it away from a compromiser. Avoiding. This is unassertive and uncooperative. This is the invisible group member. This is not a good one. It's not good to avoid conflict, because if you avoid conflict, you don't ever resolve anything. And so the team that has an avoiding group member, it has other people ending up doing more work because this person is not pulling their weight. And so when you have somebody who is avoiding, they're not helping. They're not being assertive. So that means they're not participating in the discussions. They may be, trying to not get in those discussions because they don't know how to navigate conflict. And they're also not helping. They're not cooperating. And so if you got somebody who is not cooperating and not participating, this is somebody who's just dead weight. So it's really not a good idea to be an avoiding conflict management style. Now, you may find yourself having to do a little bit of avoiding from time to time, regardless of what your dominant conflict management approach is. There are times where avoiding is the right thing to do. If somebody is being off the chain, avoiding could be a great way to get through a period of conflict. But as your main lens for how to navigate conflict, this is one that is not going to be healthy as your primary thing. Next, we have collaborative. This is assertive and cooperative. So this is a better route, right? This is somebody who is involved in the discussion and cooperating with the group. So this is a better view, or it's a better, behavior for how to have your main conflict management style. It's good to be working with people in a collaborative way, and it's also ideal to be cooperating. Sometimes the cooperating is going to encounter resistance, but if you've got a collaborating style as your main conflict management thing, that demonstrates very good grit. It takes grit to be a collaborator. So which one do you think your main conflict management style is? Are you a collaborator? Are you an avoider? Are you a compromiser? Are you an accommodator? Or are you a competer? So think about it for a little bit. There are times when I am accommodating, and there are times when I'm collaborating. When I'm in a group where I don't feel like I get a whole lot of say, I might be less assertive and more cooperative. I might be doing some going along to get along. When I'm at my best, I'm more of a collaborator. And part of that was because I had a speech impediment for the first 20-something years of my life. And so it was difficult for me to be anything other than, a compromiser or an accommodator. We can be all in different situations. I think that's a true statement. So think about, what are the strengths of your style and the limitations of your style? What do you value about the other 3 styles? And what would happen if you projected your style onto that group? What if you're a competitor and you wanted to have other people compete? There's a meaning behind that. Sometimes it's to show that you're going to win in a competition. Sometimes the one that I saw a whole lot was the avoider. You'd get somebody who's an avoider, and then you would get somebody else who was like, you know what, that works for him. I don't want to do this either. I'm going to be an avoider too. And then before you know it, you got 4 avoiders and one person who wants to not be responsible for the entire project. I think that was my favorite. My facetious favorite in college. I was in a group one time, and we had a girl who wanted to take over, and we had 4 of us who were like a little overwhelmed. And, I was able to get out of my avoiding couple of minutes and get into more of a collaborative environment, and where I was able to keep her from taking the whole thing over and doing it all on her own, because I knew I did not like where she was taking it. But there were, 3 other people in my group who were avoiders, and this was when I still had speech troubles. And my hardwiring was, I would like to avoid any, responsibility here at all, because I might have to speak. And so if you project your style onto that group, it could be great if you're mature and you've got all your stuff going in a proactive way. But if you haven't got it all figured out yet, sometimes it's better to let those things come out and then see. And then you judge for yourself what these other people are in your group and how it's going to play out. Donald says, unfortunately, I tend to be accommodating. I rarely ever come into conflict with others. And when I do, I tend to be in conflict with someone else, and they're set in their ways. So if I'm ever in that situation, I don't see a way to change it. I just do whatever to get it over with and move on. Yep. So it's totally understandable. And, accommodating is a good way to be a facilitator, right? So sometimes that desire to be a facilitator is what leads to accommodating. And so sometimes you just have to figure out where it is that the group is best served before you find what your strength is. And, you know, there are lots of opportunities to find out along the way. And being at Full Sail, you'll get lots of opportunities like this. All right. So part of what we're getting to here is, you know, this is all stuff that you do in a group. And so here are some things that you can do to help your group develop flow. You need a clear collective goal, right? A shared mission or vision. Practice deep listening. Keep it moving forward, the conversation. Engage in complete concentration. Manage the control paradox, like individual control versus the group flow. Don't let somebody hijack it, you know. Learn to blend egos. Equal participation is a really big deal. Sometimes you can get those, you know, accommodators or avoiders to kick it up a notch if we give them equal participation. Familiarity breeds content. Communicate a lot. And then harness the group's potential and fear of failure. Part of what I think is important is it's good to let these group dynamics play out and know a little bit about how that happens so that you can be a step ahead. You don't have to be the person that knows everything. You just have to be able to know a little bit about some of these concepts so that you can plan for what may be coming in that process. Cool. All right, so that is the conflict management stuff. All right, it is 3:35. Let's look at our week 3 work. Don't forget the call to play is due tomorrow night. And your discussion board, your initial post is due Thursday. Don't forget, if you missed the Thursday deadline, you can do your initial post late. If you do your initial post late, do 3 responses instead of 2, and we will give you the opportunity to earn full credit, even if you missed the initial post. All right, so here is your discussion for week 3. So first thing I want to say is notice you're going to complete the weekly reading. We're going to go click the orange here to go see your quests in just a second, but you're going to be doing question 2, 3, and 4. A paragraph for each one. Question 2, which quests did you choose, and describe your experience. It's the describing your experience part that turns into a paragraph. Cool? Question number 3 is the big sticking point here because we want you to identify, define, and apply 2 concepts from the reading. That needs to be a full paragraph where you tell us what those concepts are, tell us what they mean, and tell us how do you apply those things? How do those quests refer back to the reading? Okay. And so maybe you choose quest 2, which I'll get to, is going to be the weekly plan. Let's say you want to talk about how the weekly plan connected back to the reading material. So we just went over grit, right? So you could write about grit, underline grit, and say this is having the passion to achieve your long-term goals through perseverance. That's what it means. And so developing the weekly plan for week 2 really helped me connect with how I do grit. Here are some of the things that I did this week to develop grit in my life. Look at my work category here. I got 3 different things for each day. So those are the things we want you to do in question 3. And then question 4, how do you use these quests to motivate you personally, professionally, and academically in the future? And so here you can just write a paragraph about what do you do with your motivation. I rubbed my face with sandpaper. Grit, 80. Nice. So 3 paragraphs for questions 2, 3, and 4. 2 concepts from the reading. And so let's go look at our quests for this week. Number 1 is a mood board. You may ask, what in the world is a mood board? It is basically a collection of images that demonstrate how you feel or how you would like to feel. It doesn't have to be one or the other, but it could be how you feel or how you would like to feel. And so a mood board is just a picture. It's a picture of pictures. And so you can go onto Adobe Spark and create a mood board. Here are some examples of mood boards. But if you see, these pictures all kind of support each other in how they look. See how the color theme is similar? Minimalist here thing, it's all similar. Is Spark free? Spark is part of your Adobe subscription. And so, yes. So a mood board, you can build one of these on Spark. If you have a Pinterest board, Pinterest is literally a place where you could create a mood board. I know my wife is very into Pinterest. That's a totally acceptable way to do a mood board here. Some people do a slide and they'll put images onto a slide and upload that slide. That's fine too. And so that's the mood board for Quest 1. Quest 2 is the weekly plan. And so it's the same as last week and the week before. If you come down here, you can get the weekly plan document. You do need to send this thing in, filled out. There it is. It's huge. That's a big plan. So here you go. We want you to fill this thing in. 3 items each day for the work category, 1 item each day for play, fit, and push. If you need some review on what you would like to do for your weekly plan, go back and look at the week 1 reading or the week 1 lecture where we talk about all the parts of the weekly plan. Cool. Quest 3 is gamify a task. And so we want you to gamify a boring task and make it fun. Refer to the gamification strategies in the reading for guidance. What you're going to turn in is a visual presentation pitching your gamified activity using any medium you would prefer. But the kicker here is you want 2 different gamification techniques in your presentation. So if you choose gamify a task, we want you to send in a visual thing, PowerPoint slide, video, picture with pictures on it, something to demonstrate. So I always do like a poster board. Yes, you can take a picture of a poster board, literally, and send in the picture of the poster board. I talk about washing the dishes because that's my thing. So I could totally make a game out of washing the dishes. And so how would I do that? You know, I would give myself points for doing the dishes 7 days a week. I could earn points 7 times. I could make a leaderboard if I was competing with my wife and my kids, right? But you want to put those concepts in there. What are the concepts you're doing? Are there levels? Are there points? Are there badges? Are we trying to actually pitch the idea or just what we did to gamify the pitch? So, so you're turning in an image that just presents a game of whatever your task is that's boring. And so for me, if I'm doing this, I'm taking a picture of my kitchen and it's a hot mess, right? So let's say I'm gonna make a poster board. I'm gonna have, a poster board with an image of my kitchen. And then I'm gonna have maybe, I might write on construction paper, leaderboard, mom, dad, kid 1, kid 2, right? And then I can have little ticks going up the side of the page with levels on it. And each time you do dishes, you go up a notch, right? So think about how you would do these things. Do a little bit of exposure for yourself to the gamification concepts so that you land on your thing. How would you do your boring task and turn in some sort of visual project on it? You could, yes, turn it in like instructions on how to play the game with pictures of what you're doing. Yes, yes. Just don't send in an essay. What we don't want you to do is send in an essay about this is what I would do. We want you to send in a visual representation of whatever it is you're thinking of to take a boring activity and make it fun with gamification concepts, badges, points, leaderboards, challenges, anything like that. Cool. Quest 4 is play a game. Have dishes paid for to be clean. There you go. Recruit 1 or more of your classmates and play a game your whole team can participate in together. We're going to go look at the discussion board for ways that you can connect with your classmates. What you're turning in is a collage or avatars showing your team members and the game you played. And you can each turn in the same collage. So check it out. We're going to go back to the directions. If choosing Quest 4, click here to connect with your classmates as well as other students. So I'm going to go click that. And here we have a spreadsheet where people are going in and they're sharing their information so that they can participate with each other with all their contact information and the games they like. So if you're going to do Quest 4, come back over here, add your name in, meet up with some folks, go play a game, and then come back here to your quest and create a collage or avatars showing your teammates and what game you played. Cool. So this sheet here lives under the orange here on number 1, letter C. Cool. And as always, let us know. Jennifer and I are here for you so that you know what it is you need. Any questions? All right. So let's see. Want to play a game with the class? Does Jackbox count? I think yes. Go over to the to that page and see if anybody else is, wanting to do that. You can certainly go ask them if other students would like to do it. You guys can go on the chat on the discussion board and communicate over there too. All right. It is 3:47. I think we've covered just about everything. Don't forget, on Wednesday, Laura is going to talk about the MBTI. So be sure to come check that out. I'm going to go ahead and turn off our recording and we will end. Thank y'all so much for coming.